Have you ever, looked in your closet and wondered what's really behind the clothes you wear? I'm not just talking about the fabric, but the actual story of how it got to you. Well, today, we are going to peel back the layers of the fashion world, but we're not looking at the runway. Nope, we're looking at the paperwork. We're breaking down a super powerful tool that's changing how companies have to talk about sustainability, the SASB standard for apparel, accessories, and footwear.
But before we get into all the nitty-gritty details, let's just start with a simple question. When you buy a t-shirt, what does it really cost? And I don't just mean the price on the tag, I mean the true cost, the cost to our planet, the cost to the people who made it, and yeah, the potential cost to the company that sold it to you if something goes wrong.
Because think about it. That t-shirt has been on this incredible global journey, right? It spanned continents and touched countless hands. It probably started as a tiny seed in a cotton field. Then it traveled to a mill to be spun into thread. And finally, it landed in a factory to be dyed, cut, and stitched together. Every single one of those steps has an impact. And for a very long time, those impacts, well, they've been mostly hidden from all of us.
So, how in the world do we make sense of all this complexity? Especially if you're an investor, trying to figure out which companies are actually managing these hidden risks and which ones are, just hoping nobody notices. You need a common language. You need a standard. Okay, so this is where the SASB standards come into play. Now, SASB is part of the IFRS Foundation, and you could just think of them as the big global organization that sets the accounting rules for public companies all over the world. What they've done is create a rule book for companies to report on sustainability in a way that's consistent, that's comparable, and that's reliable. So what exactly is a sustainability accounting standard? The easiest way to think about it is like a nutrition label, but for a company's overall health. It's a framework that helps companies pinpoint and report on the sustainability issues that are what we call financially material. And this is not just about being green or feeling good. This is about information that can directly impact a company's bottom line. And here it is. This is the absolute key. This quote from the standard itself connects sustainability directly to the money. We're talking cash flows, getting loans, the cost of capital. So in other words, these aren't soft issues anymore. They are hard, cold, financial realities that investors absolutely need to know about. All right, so now that we know what the SASB standard is all about, let's take a closer look at how it actually applies to the fashion industry. The standard really breaks it down into four main areas. We're going to start with the first two, which are all about the physical stuff our clothes are actually made of. First up, chemicals. Yeah, we're talking about all the substances that are used in making our clothes and our accessories. I mean, think about the dyes that make your jeans that perfect shade of blue, or the coatings that make your jacket waterproof, or even the finishing agents that make a shirt wrinkle-free. Are they safe? Are they regulated? The company needs to tell us. And why should an investor care so much? Because, let me tell you, messing up your chemical management is a huge risk. A product recall isn't just a little bit of bad press. It's a massive hit to your revenue. It can lead to crazy expensive lawsuits, do lasting damage to a brand's reputation, and it definitely attracts a lot more unwanted attention from regulators.
So how do companies report this stuff?
Well, as you can see here, they can't just check a box that says, yep, we're safe. The standard makes them give a detailed discussion of their processes. How are they testing their products? How do they make sure that all their suppliers around the world are following the rules? Investors want to see that a company has a real, solid, well-documented system in place to manage this risk. Okay, let's move on to the next big topic, raw materials sourcing. This is all about where the fundamental building blocks of our clothes, the cotton, the leather, the wool, the polyester, where do they actually come from? Just think about it for a second. If a brand relies almost entirely on cotton from a region that's suddenly hit by extreme drought, that's a major risk for supply chain disruption and, of course, price hikes. Or what if they're sourcing leather from areas linked to deforestation? That's an enormous reputational risk. All of this can literally stop a company's ability to grow in its tracks.
And the key is how they have to report this. So look at this table. A company has to identify its most important materials. Let's just use cotton as an example. Then they have to state the key risks, something like water stress. Next, they connect that directly to a business risk like price volatility. And finally, they have to describe their strategy, like maybe they're partnering with a group like the Better Cotton Initiative to promote sustainable farming, or they're working to improve traceability.
Okay, so we've covered what goes into our clothes. Now for the really fascinating part. How are they actually made? This gets us into the vast, complex, and often pretty hidden world of the global supply chain.
So the third major topic is the environmental footprint of that supply chain.
We are talking about the incredible amount of water that gets used up and polluted during the dyeing process, or all the energy that's needed to power these massive manufacturing plants 24/7.
To really get this, let's map out the supply chain real quick. Think of it kind of like a family tree. At the very top, you've got the brand you buy from. They work directly with what are called Tier 1 suppliers. Those are the factories that actually assemble the final clothes. But those factories get their fabric and dyes from beyond Tier 1 suppliers. The environmental impact is happening at every single level of this family tree.
For an investor, a company that just ignores its supply chain's environmental impact is a really bad investment. I mean, a pollution scandal can absolutely destroy a brand's reputation overnight. And as resources like clean water become more and more scarce and regulations get tighter, the costs are just going to skyrocket for companies that aren't on top of these issues.
And this is exactly why the standard demands hard numbers. It asks what percentage of your suppliers are complying with wastewater permits. And it also asks what percentage have completed a detailed assessment, like the HIG Facility Environmental Module, which is basically an industry tool that helps factories measure their performance. This gives investors a really clear picture of how much control a brand actually has over its own supply chain.
And finally, and this one is so important, we come to the fourth topic, the people who make our clothes. This covers everything about labor conditions, from fair pay and working hours to, most critically, the health and safety of the workers.
You see, a factory disaster or a major strike doesn't just stay in the news for a day or two. It can literally halt production, it can trigger consumer boycotts, and it often leads to costly new regulations. Brands that are associated with poor labor practices face absolutely enormous reputational and financial risks.
So this is where the rubber really meets the road. The standard asks, okay, what percentage of your supplier facilities have you actually audited? But then it goes even deeper. It asks for the priority non-conformance rate, which is just a formal way of saying, how often are you finding the really serious problems? And then, even more importantly, what's your corrective action rate? Because it's not enough to just find the problems. Investors want to know if the company is actually fixing them.
Whew! Okay, we've just walked through the 4 key topics of the SASB standard for fashion. We've seen how it connects sustainability to real, tangible financial risks and opportunities. But what does all of this mean for you? Well, let's talk about that next.
Well, if you're a consumer, you now have the knowledge to ask better, tougher questions. You know what specific information to look for in a company's reports, so ask for it. If you're a student, whether you're studying finance or fashion, understanding standards like this is absolutely crucial for your future career. And if you're in business, this shows that this kind of reporting isn't just some chore. It's a strategic tool for building a stronger, more resilient company. So we'll leave you with this final thought. As this kind of clear, comparable, and financially relevant information becomes more and more available, it gives all of us, investors, shoppers, everyone, a lot more power. So the real question is, will it change the way you think about and the way you buy your clothes? I can tell you it's already changing the way I think about mine.